Is it just me, or can we be a little misguided when it comes to the heroes we cultivate in our culture these days? I mean, our popular culture really only seems to be able to produce two extremes when it comes to the, male hero. It's either the annoying beta male type or the so-called alpha male, the badass type that really seems to be overdone these days. The latter being the modern concept of the dominating man who thrives in violence for its own sake and is defined by doing and taking what he wants. In my opinion, it's probably derived from the philosophical notion of the Übermensch in Nietzsche and other philosophers that were appropriating pagan tropes from Norse, Germanic, and classical Greek myths, while the weakling beta male is a more postmodern concept meant to counteract the modern alpha male type, by being more gentle and less dominant and often passive.
Don't flip! Yeah!
Are you a good boy?
Proponents of either concept constantly accuse the other of being toxic and detrimental to society and whatnot, and they fight with each other for hours in comment sections and social media. But guys, calm down. You're both toxic. The true virtue of true masculinity in Western civilization was discovered long ago, and it's neither modern or postmodern. It's not about choosing between a tough man archetype or a gentle boy archetype. The key is to find the universally affected male archetype in the gentle man warrior, or in more ancient terms, the knight. The word gentleman emphasizes these two concepts, because the best man capable of being the most productive and helpful to his society is one who is gentle to those who need the gentle touch, namely women and children, under his protection, and yet is simultaneously capable of spilling the blood of the monsters and criminals who threaten those that cannot protect themselves. A gentleman is capable of violence, yes, but not out of hatred. The best example of the gentleman in his complete virtue is in Lord of the Rings, where aspects of the ideal man are reflected within three characters: Aragorn, Gandalf, and Frodo. Yet today we will focus on Aragorn. This is because his archetype is the one that's most egregiously violated by our current cultural errors, as the beta male and the badass are both horrible mutilations of Aragorn's two halves. Although Gandalf is also not spared, and neither is poor Frodo, we have to really focus on one for time, and Aragorn's the coolest, so let's go. Here's why Aragorn is the perfect representation of the gentleman warrior archetype, or the knight. He is humble, a fighter, dutiful, caring, respectful, honest, faithful, sympathetic, and dedicated to something greater than himself. By no means is Aragorn a Gary Sue or a Derry Stew or whatever it's called in the male version.
I find the term sexist in itself,
Okay.
because it's Mary Sue. I don't think there's a thing called Ryan Craig.
So much so that he's not even the main character. Why? Because he doesn't have power or ability to be the main character. Because the most serious problem affecting his world is a temptation-inducing brainwashing magic ring thing, which Aragorn is completely helpless to fight. Unlike the character Frodo, who's a small creature with enough humility to withstand its temptations of power. But Aragorn knows his limitations, and so he steps back. He doesn't take it upon himself to solve all the world's problems, because he can't. But he understands that he can help and save the millions of others through his capabilities and his skills. This already doesn't make him the hyper-competent badass that can do whatever he wants or whatever the story needs him to do. Aragorn is part of a fellowship. He is defined by how well he can help those in his group because of how dedicated he is to specific skills for the good of others. He is not defined by his ability to single-handedly destroy his enemies and all the obstacles to his own personal desires. Yet he is also extremely competent in what he does and is formidable so as to be an integral part of his fellowship. He is not like the beta male in his false humility and fragility, which is actually just him being overburdened with personal insecurities and flaws, even if the beta male can occasionally do something useful. Aragorn's limitations make him central for a wonderful reflection on the nature of humility and power, as the fact that he is meant for a position of power in society and meant to use power makes him susceptible to power itself as a temptation, because he'd be tempted to think, if only I had more power, I could fulfill my purpose even more. But this would lead him into the pit of the pursuit of power for its own sake, which is a similar temptation that Gandalf goes through because of his similar position in human society. Yet it is through humility that Aragorn does not become a slave to power, and therefore he is actually able to use it and become truly powerful, while his ancestor failed at this and became weak and pathetic by comparison. Aragorn reaches paradoxical levels of humility that shouldn't even be possible. He denies the ring when it's offered to him because he knows that he's not humble enough to handle it. But by denying it, he proves to indeed have humility, which means he's humble because he knows he's not humble enough, which creates a singularity of goodness, which collapses in on itself and defies all laws of physics and destroys the evil in the story. Kind of. Aragorn is an inspirational character because of how he handles himself. He's cool and confident, and he naturally creates followers and admirers because he's not seeking to dominate them. He seeks to help them. The dude's got the skills, man, which means he could dominate everyone around him through force and cunning and whatnot, but he doesn't. He seeks to help, to protect, to guide, and even to heal, which is way more prevalent in the books. In the movies, he doesn't seem to use his healing abilities that much. However, Aragorn acquired his abilities and skills over time through hard work and sacrifice. He purposely dedicated himself to become hyper-competent, precisely so that he could be reliable and dependable for the good of others. And people sense that, which naturally makes them seek him out as a leader, precisely because of his ability to serve them. They don't just want him, they need him, because he's just that good. How he got his skills, namely through study and dedicated work, demonstrates a level of service that is undervalued in the current era of the sarcastic, arrogant, self-serving male hero, or the sassy, strong, independent woman, who, by the way, actually ends up being the perfect embodiment of toxic masculinity, but nobody notices it through her XX chromosomes. Anyway, central to Aragorn's character is the fact that he rejects the throne at first and goes off a self-imposed exile to learn all he can about how he can help others as he does missions in service of the people of his kingdom in the form of an anonymous ranger. Only after acquiring sufficient skills does he suddenly feel ready for the authority of being a ruler, and only after those around him beg him to take it. And this is so indicative of a good leader that lesser fiction does stuff like this.
The right ruler on the Iron Throne.
I don't want it.
You will rule wisely and well, while
She is my queen.
And even real historical characters like Julius Caesar go all like, "No, I don't want to be king of the Romans. We're a republic, don't you know?" while he becomes dictator for life. By far, the most interesting thing about Aragorn as a character is that he isn't the chosen one per se, though I understand why sometimes people can make that mistake. He is born with a destiny to rule mankind and to defeat evil and whatnot, and even ghosts obey him. But this isn't because he's the chosen one. The chosen one type characters are usually either chosen by fate, the cosmos, a divine being, or apparently a computer algorithm. Just like how PewDiePie was chosen in our world, lately chosen ones have become a little more grounded, but it's often characterized by someone of no royal birth who is chosen by circumstance to rise above the established social elites, precisely because of the fact that this demonstrates a higher power to society itself from which true greatness is derived. Therefore, Frodo fits the chosen one trope a lot more than Aragorn.
This task was appointed to you, Frodo of the Shire. If you do not find a way, no one will.
And this is precisely why Chosen One stories are usually about destroying an oppressive system or fighting an evil oppressive society ruled by an evil leader or evil nobles. But Aragorn is not any of that. He is a royal. Maybe a deposed royal lineage that has been out of power, sure, but his rise is still a matter of fulfilling a social convention. His rise is an expectation from all those around him. He is not meant to fight social elitism, for he himself is an elite or a member of the elites. Rather, he's born into this position of privilege, but he's meant to justify it through selfless service. This is what is so unique about Aragorn. He is not a revolutionary or a man of a poor, simple background who rises to the top, which basically every other hero in fiction is these days. Basically without exception. The only other character like him I can think of is Batman. He's the only one like Aragorn that I can think of. But if you think about it, Batman doesn't really count because he's an American, and his status quo is a de facto revolutionary one that defies the British crown, so he doesn't count. The best thing about Aragorn is that despite being born into royalty and being raised in an elvish luxury mansion, he understood his role as a servant for the common man. Many works of fiction complain about a class system or inequality or whatever, but Aragorn represents a different worldview, not one that simply complains about the unfair nature of the world and goes all like, "Oh, but some people are born into privilege and others aren't." The idea behind Aragorn is that those who happen to be born into high status have a duty to help the ones in unfortunate positions. Aragorn is therefore the solution to injustice. He is a man who does his best with what is given to him. The world is unfair and dark by nature. It's full of monsters and villains, and there is inequality everywhere. Certain people are born with more inherent ability, health, strength, longevity, and even wisdom. It's not just that they are born within a privileged position in society which gives them access to education, but that some are also born born with the vocation and natural ability to excel with their given education. High status alone doesn't guarantee that you'll go far. You have to have special virtues. Aragorn had no say in how he was born and his privileged upbringing. He only had a say in what he could do with the things that he received, and he dedicated all that was given to him for the good of others. As a wise man once said, the more that is given, the more that is expected, which is a much cooler and much older version of that Spider-Man quote. To see just how much better Aragorn is to either the badass type character or the beta boy kind of trope, let's compare him to two other characters who perfectly represent either of these unfortunate tropes. Right, so the alpha male badass type is perfectly encapsulated in Kratos from the God of War series. I hated this guy as a kid, man, even while playing the game. I despised his arrogance, his callous treatment of human life. He's just a fiend fighting other fiends, not all of whom are actually as bad as he is. Zeus might be worse, but a lot of his other opponents aren't even that bad when compared to him, which really made it a burden to have to accompany him in his adventures. That changes with the newest game, which came out in 2018, but even then, Kratos still isn't really a hero. He's just a man by that point. Normal, morally speaking. He's not unique in his virtue. He's only unique in his inherent power because of his genetic makeup, being the son of Zeus and all. But in the end, he's just a criminal motivated by selfish goals in the first game, and then a monster motivated to reclaim his power in the second game, and then a revenge-filled lunatic in the third game, only to be redeemed off-screen, and then show up in the last game as still not a hero, but just, not a lunatic, who wishes to serve the final wishes of his dead wife and protect his son. Like any dude, that's not heroic. It's just the bare minimum of his obligations. Congratulations, Kratos! You're not a total piece of crap anymore. Anyway, onward to the beta male. The Twilight losers. I know this is kind of outdated because these morons haven't been culturally relevant since I was in high school, around 10 years ago. Ugh, I'm so old. Anyway, Twilight is still popular enough, and it did in fact launch a torrent of beta male romantics into the culture, that I can still use them as an example for what I mean. They're betas because although they possess incredible abilities, it's often inherent to them, and therefore these abilities are passively obtained. And passivity is very much their definitive characteristic, which is exactly why these idiotic dunces get caught in love triangles. Bro, if the girl you're after is so indecisive, she's stringing you along, and it's pathetic. Move on! You'll find someone else and someone better. To be in a love triangle requires passivity, because it requires that a man wait for someone else to make the final decision of whether or not he's going to be in a relationship. A confident man would want a lady to be certain, and if she's playing too many games, he just moves on. Also, this obsession with romance in this way reeks of a selfish obsession. None of these people really love each other. They only really love themselves, if you think about it, because they love the feeling that the other person gives them, not the person herself.
Your scent, it's like a drug to me. You're like my own personal brand of heroin.
Because if their love was pure, they'd be able to stop this toxic, unhealthy game and leave the person behind, because that would be more healthy for everyone involved. You only know you love her when you let her go. I mean, people died because of all this crap in this franchise. Look at how Aragorn handles a similar situation. For one thing, he doesn't tolerate any love triangles, I can tell you that. When Eowyn, is that her name? The pretty Rohirrim girl, when she gets too obsessed, he literally tells her she doesn't really love him, but is just infatuated with the idea of him, because she doesn't really know who he is. And his love with Arwen is perfectly healthy. It just can't work in the meantime because of all the geopolitical and war going on. Also, Aragorn's a lot better than most of the protagonists that come out of anime, I can tell you that. I mean, I love anime just as much as the next guy. I'm not a weeb though, but oh sweet heavens, a lot of the stuff shown there is pretty unhealthy.
好きってだって俺
私とお兄ちゃんは本当の兄弟じゃない。
Anyway, this is why I think Aragorn is the best example of the male hero in our era. And yeah, if you guys liked the video, if you support what I do here, all I ask is just subscribe and leave a like. This really helps us in what we're doing here. I'm not the only one behind this channel, and we're all working pretty hard to pop out these videos every week. And we're gonna try to produce 2 more on a weekly basis. So if you guys like that, please leave a like and subscribe. Anyway, till the next one, guys. See you later.